You may be wondering what Hilda is doing in this list. In solo queue, everyone wants to pick damage-oriented heroes, and what's often missing is a tank. Roamers now also tend to pick healers, and they don't really tank. While having a mage has its merit, it's overrated, and here's why. Most backliners don't really buy defense. Sometimes even the EXP laner goes full damage. So it's more practical to fill the tank role than to force a mage pick. Plus, if your team has a magic damage core like Gusion, Amon, Julian, or Joy, and a gold laner like Nate or Harith, then you actually have a balanced team composition. But why Hilda of all the tanks? We pick Hilda because of her fast wave clear and rotation speed. I'd argue that she clears faster than any mage. Hilda can put pressure on anyone because she's tanky, deals a considerable amount of damage, and can easily heal up. And if you still think it's weird to have Hilda in the mid lane, think again, because she's actually been used in MPL before by Master the Basics. Although it didn't take off in the mainstream, it's because it didn't do too well due to their improper itemization. Yes, itemization makes all the difference. Sadly, the pro players are notorious for bad itemization. Try this out and you will be surprised how effective this method is. Here's the appropriate build to use to make this strategy work. It's important to max out mobility. I know some players skip agility thinking her first skill already gives enough speed, but they're basically nerfing her and neutralizing her advantage. The point of maxing out mobility in the emblem is to keep her from being too reliant on her first skill speed boost. She needs to save it for disengaging from fights. You can still use it like you normally would, but ideally, you should be conservative and reserve it for getting out of danger. Why not sprint if it's a matter of mobility? It's because we still need Purify. Deaths usually come from being pinned down, not from a lack of mobility. Avoid Revitalize. Hilda is a selfish hero. She's not healing teammates with it, she's only healing herself. She doesn't stick with teammates like Lylia would. She zones the enemy backline. There are plenty of bushes where she can heal, so there's no need for Revitalize. Picking Revitalize instead of Purify is like a one-way ticket to suicide mission, with little to no hope of coming back. Hilda mid lane was one of my secret weapons when I was actively coaching and drafting. So this is something special you can enjoy. Blacklist didn't have much success with their Hilda mid lane because of their itemization. But this setup is the key to making her work. Jawhead is an underrated hero who becomes a real threat when drafted and itemized properly. He synergizes especially well with Mathilda, as her guiding wind covers his mobility gap. Alternatively, pairing him with healers can also bring out his potential. Jawhead dominates the early game, thriving in small skirmishes where his gank and burst potential shine. But once the game shifts to full-blown team fights, his single target focus holds him back, leaving him vulnerable to being kited and deleted. The way to handle this is by shifting his playstyle from pickoffs to teamfight impact, which can be achieved through smart itemization. Open with Hunter Strike and Fury Hammer for early damage, and add a Legion Sword to boost your burst. Once that foundation is set, start building tank items for durability. By the late game, sell the Fury Hammer and upgrade Legion Sword into Malefic Roar. The idea is simple: build damage first to secure pickoffs and snowball, then transition into survivability for team fights. Here's the complete recommended build. I hope you find this guide helpful. Thank you for joining our private members club.
Ready to crush the dark system and absolutely dominate the game? Join my private itemization club. Learn my secret itemization methods, insights, and game-changing innovations. Stay miles ahead. You'll also get a free, guaranteed in-depth guide for your favorite hero, and every perk that comes with it.
Kimmy's damage output is still underwhelming, not far off from her pre-revamped version. You can easily verify this by observing and running the numbers. What truly makes her strong, however, is her mobility and crowd control abilities. Her ultimate is much like Tigreal's Implosion, but long-ranged and can be cast from a long distance. And her first skill, which is another crowd control skill. Kimmy's stats say she only gets 50% from lifesteal and spellband, but in actual tests, she gets 100%. That's why concentrated energy becomes a core item. It gives her HP and regen to help her stay alive. Her skills and basic attacks have low magic power scaling, so we focus on utility over damage instead. Purchase Glowing Wand to help take the load off your teammates, so they don't have to build it themselves. After Glowing Wand, another key item is Blood Wings. It adds even more survivability with bonus HP and a shield. A lot of players focus too much on trying to max out a hero's damage, and when it doesn't work out, they blame the system. What they don't see is that their item build is the problem. Now that the hype around Kimmy's damage has died down and players are realizing what she is really about, they are slowly shifting to a build similar to my recommendations. We're also adding fleeting time to her inventory. Kimmy's all about her ult and first skill, so it makes sense to boost those instead of stacking more damage that doesn't really do much. Now, moving to the emblem talent. Quantum Charge is still one of the best talents despite all the nerfs. Mobility is king. Here's my recommended build. Kimmy's best position is in the mid lane, as her skills are great for ganking and team fights. To wrap up, here's an interesting stat. Kimmy's attack speed is 7.6 hits per second. Demon Shoes promises infinite mana, but it's not what you need. 2 magic necklaces is actually enough. Sell one, and upgrade the other to Enchanted Talisman. You might run low on mana but will never run out of mana. There's no difference between having infinite mana and having just enough mana. What you really need are armor boots to avoid deaths. Sure, Demon Shoes might fly against bad players, but face off against the pros, and you're on a one-way journey to the Shadow Realm. Don't rush Flask of the Oasis and compromise your own durability. Opt for armor boots, preferably the tough ones, for that crowd control reduction. I encourage you to re-evaluate your pre-existing itemization knowledge because they might be outdated or inaccurate. Pro players and coaches have different specializations. Pro players have average itemization know-how, and they make the same itemization mistakes just like everyone else. Support heroes need damage too, sure, but you need armor more than you need magic damage. Don't try to turn her into a damage mage and compromise her survival. It's acceptable for real damage mages to die after they have used their abilities. It's not fine if you die you're a healing support. Here's my recommended build, take a gander. Those who think that they can go for all damage because they think they can just safely hide behind the teammate's back are being unrealistic. Against bad players, sure, you may be able to get away with it, but versus good players, you're dead. Grock got reworked. His first skill no longer requires channeling, it's quicker now, but the drawback is that it deals less damage. His passive was altered. No more heals. In exchange, he gets a shield. Fair trade. The extra movement speed was removed, which makes rotation slower. However, he now deals enhanced damage when his energy bar is full. His physical scaling is still low, despite his ultimate having 300% scaling. Moreover, having just 2 damage items is often enough to kill a marksman with a full combo. While it's viable, Grock is still more of a utility type hero. His burst capacity is still fairly limited. They can just as easily go for a tankier build to negate his solo kill potential. Nonetheless, having the solo kill potential can be a game changer when having brain dead teammates. Evidently, it boils down to a judgment call. Here's my build recommendation. Let's talk about the buff Lapu Lapu. They improved his damage reduction and lowered his skill cooldowns. This shifts his role from an ambush assassin to a more sustained heavy fighter, playing like a secondary frontliner. They still start with a good All Fury Hammer to boost your early game damage. Skip Hunter Strike because it doesn't fit his playing style anymore. Then grab a defensive item for good measure. And from there, we build it into War Axe, which now fits his new playstyle. But don't rush it. The item didn't get better, the hero did. It still has weak components, a clunky build path, and as a first item, still not ideal. Sustained isn't everything. Lapu still needs armor to actually outlast enemies, especially in extended fights. So you still want to build at least one heavy armor item before you go into War Axe. Most of the games you see out there are scripted or heavily filtered. You rarely see the matches where they face strong opponents because those games are considered boring and nobody watches them. That said, I prefer a game like this one. It's honest and more in line with what you'd normally see when facing players of similar skill. This match shows the hero's actual limitations, and the result is very different from those overly hyped highlight clips. One of the limitations that this game reveals is the trade-off of having Hunter Strike. His ability to sustain and stay in combat is greatly reduced. Now here's my recommended build, take a gander. Brute Force Breastplate got a small buff. It now gives 800 HP and 25% crowd control resistance, not game changing, but it does help in extended trades. Its passive is also in sync with War Axe. Interestingly, Moonton actually designed them to be used as a pair. The problem was Brute Force was just too weak back then, so the combo was short-lived. Now its viability has improved. Moreover, depending on the match, you might want to skip it for a proper tank item instead. As for Queen's Wings, it doesn't really belong in the defense category anymore. Yeah, it still has damage reduction, but the window is so short, it's unreliable. It feels more like a bonus stat than the main reason to buy it. Queen's Wings is basically a damage item now. So if you're worried your build has too much defense and not enough offense, don't be. Queen's Wings gives you that +1 damage without fully sacrificing survivability. Let this match set your expectations, don't chase the highlight reels. Arcane shoes and swift boots are obsolete. The esports pros have already realized this, but you'll still see top globals buying them. Why? Because many players still assume that maxing out damage is the key to carrying the team. But that assumption has no real basis. In reality, the game has been steadily shifting toward a more balanced approach to itemization. Not too long ago, players only used the battle spell, Inspire. They think that without Inspire, Nathan has no damage. Then he came out in the pro scene and just like that, everyone's opinion shifted. They now think it's fine. Players used to think Nathan had no damage without Inspire until the pros proved otherwise, and just like that, everyone was fine with Purify. So here's another shift. The custom tank emblem. It's even less dramatic than switching to Purify, and the value it brings is massive. Of course, some players still swear by full damage builds, and you might have seen top global players dominate with them. But that's usually against less experienced opponents or the grade 4 students. Those games don't matter. What's important is winning the clutch games, the games against good players, and turning them from a loss into a win. Therefore, correct and proper itemization is the key. With that in mind, let's move into itemization beginning with Starliam Scythe. The item has been nerfed, its true damage now only triggers every 5 seconds, and worse, Nathan's clone can no longer trigger it at all. In addition, Nathan has surprisingly low mana consumption, so he doesn't need the mana regeneration that the item offers. Therefore, you don't need Starliam Scythe as much as you may think. Then comes Holy Crystal, and here's the problem. It's just too expensive. You'd practically have to sell your left nut to buy it. Are you familiar with the concept of gold flow? With how in the early game the gold flow is slower but faster in the late game. It's due to the frequency of teamfights. More assists, more kills and double laning. In the late game, when the gold flow is faster, Holy Crystal runs into a slot problem with 3 magic power components available. You can only fit one in your inventory, forcing you to miss out on the bonuses from the others. It's a design flaw that needs to be fixed. Mintoon, if you're watching this, please improve the item. You might ask, is it good or viable when you're snowballing? Not really. The stats stay the same regardless, and so does its performance. It's not going to make it better. Moving on to the next item. Divine Glaive. It's a common misconception that penetration items are only good for the late game. In reality, you can build Divine Glaive as early as your 3rd item. In fact, it's the ideal timing for Nathan in a typical match. Here's the rest of the recommended build. Crit items remain best for him, so we still pick up Haas's Claws and Berserker's Fury to optimize his DPS. As a combo, these are highly dependent on each other, making them ideal for the late game when gold flow is higher. The Dead is one of the most underrated mages, but she's actually very strong when played correctly and itemized properly. Getting the glowing wand is almost compulsory as she must provide an anti-heal for the team. Blood Wings provides a significant boost to her durability without sacrificing damage. Fleeting time is not necessary. As it turns out, she has enough reset time and doesn't need extra cooldown for her ultimate. The Dead can dish out an insane amount of damage, and even with one defense item. Here's my recommended build, take a gander. For the emblem and talents, we use the basic common emblem for the mana and HP regen. Avoid Temporal Rain, the double stun is just a hype, we can still double stun the enemy heroes without it. Instead, we opt for the Warcry talent for maximum damage. Minsitthar can be good against Mathilda, as his ultimate prevents enemies from dashing away. He also works well as a counter to heroes that rely on dashes, like Lancelot, Arlott, Paquito, Benedetta, and so on. Moving on to itemization. I've talked about Demon Hunter's Sword and how it's not ideal for heroes that deal damage later in a fight. But Minsitthar is different. He's an initiator, which means a large portion of the initial damage comes from him. And he gets a ton of value from the item. The Demon Trinity also complements Minsittar's second skill, making it a solid choice in his build. When planning itemization for Minsitthar, you should focus on the overall team damage output, not just his personal burst. In a coordinated team, your allies can make up for any damage gaps. But in solo play or with less experienced teammates, you might need to prioritize more damage yourself. In those cases, Malefic Roar can be a great 4th damage item. Here's my recommended build, take a gander. I hope you found this guide informative. Thanks for joining the private members club. I'll see you in the next RBB. Hello guys, today we're going to talk about Arlott, one of the most versatile heroes in Mobile Legends. His flexibility in roles and playstyles makes him a unique threat in both ranked and competitive games. Arlott's biggest strength is his flexibility. He can be played in the EXP lane or as a roamer, a trait that adds valuable unpredictability during the draft phase, forcing opponents to guess his role. Unlike typical tank setters who are limited to just that, Arlott is different, he has solo kill potential. So, if you're not careful, you could be his next Happy Meal. In addition, his fast engage and solid damage make him one of the best initiators in the game, capable of setting up plays and finishing them. As a setter and initiator, Arlott needs maximum tankiness. Damage items aren't necessary, survivability matters more. While he has dashes, they're designed for offense, not escape. That's why we take Wilderness Blessing to help cover his mobility needs. Here's my recommended build. Avoid Petrify, it's redundant. He already has built-in mini stuns. What he needs is Flicker to help him initiate and catch them off guard. In competitive matches, Flicker is recommended to initiate tactical sets. Petrify only works against less coordinated or weaker teams. You may have seen games like this with a damage build in Petrify that's just bottom feeding on inexperienced players. You never see it in esports for good reasons. Fighter Emblem isn't good early since his skills aren't spammable yet, but it becomes useful late game. Unlike Sissy who buys War Axe for spell vamp, Arlott builds defense because he's a setter and initiator. I've been spamming Sissy this season, and I had trouble facing him. His sustain is tough to deal with. Sissy deals damage over time, while he bursts quickly. It's an unfavorable matchup for Sissy since Arlott can disengage and reset on his own terms. I've come across the opinion that, when dealing with an enemy team with a lot of crowd control, it's better to pick warrior boots. The logic is that you'll get overwhelmed by crowd control, and tough boots will become insufficient, so instead, you should increase durability with warrior boots. That's completely backward reasoning. The fact is, the more crowd control the enemy has, the more valuable tough boots become. It doesn't matter how tanky your hero is, death often comes from being pinned down. The CC resistance gives you breathing room, preventing the enemy from chaining their crowd control effectively. Therefore, in situations with heavy crowd control, tough boots is still the better choice. Thunder Belt, with all the nerfs, I don't have any confidence in this item anymore. We are also discarding the enchanted talisman. It takes a while to get tanky with its setup. We are switching to the Clock of Destiny. It's so much easier to get tanky with this item, fast. And its mana regeneration is rather sufficient, just spam the free battle spell regeneration for mana. You may run low at some point, but you can mitigate that by buying a magic necklace for mana early on. So, that's a quick hack. Oracle comes with a healing effect and cooldown reduction, and the hybrid defense is perfect for him. Wilderness Blessing, Uranus needs to rotate fast to join the team fights and harass the enemies as much as possible. Quantum Charge. The movement speed to help in micros jazzing and escaping. Brave Smite is also a pretty good battle spell option for him. For the battle spell, we opt for Purify as it protects him from heavy control effects. Here's the rest of the recommended builds. The core items are Tough Boots, Clock of Destiny and Oracle. The rest are optionals.
Ready to crush the dark system and absolutely dominate the game? Join my private itemization club, learn my secret itemization methods, insights, and game-changing innovations. Stay miles ahead. You'll also get a free, guaranteed in-depth guide for your favorite hero, and every perk that comes with it.